Today we are going to see about the biological networks. So many of the networks we know, especially we are going to study about the biological networks. Biological network. A biological network is any network that applies to biological systems. A network is any system with subunits that are linked into a whole, such as species units linked into a whole food web. Biological networks provide a mathematical representation of connections found in ecological, evolutionary, and physiological studies, such as neural networks. The analysis of biological networks with respect to human diseases has led to the field of network medicine. Network biology and bioinformatics. Complex biological systems may be represented and analyzed as computable networks. For example, ecosystems can be modeled as networks of interacting species, or a protein can be modeled as a network of amino acids. Breaking a protein down further, amino acids can be represented as a network of connected atoms such as carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. Nodes and edges are the basic components of a network. Nodes represent units in the network, while edges represent the interactions between the units. Nodes can represent a wide variety of biological units, from individual organisms to individual neurons in the brain. Two important properties of network are degree and betweenness and certainty. Degree or connectivity, a distinct usage from that used in the graph theory, is the number of edges that connect a node, while betweenness is the measure of how central a node is in the unit. So today we are going to see about the protein-protein interaction networks. Mini protein-protein interaction, shortly denoted as PPI, in a self-formed protein interaction network, shortly denoted as pins, where proteins are nodes and their interactions are edges. So pins are the most intensely analyzed networks in biology. There are dozens of PPI detection methods to identify such interactions. The yeast of hybrid system is a commonly used experimental technique for the study of binary interactions. So gene regulatory networks. Gene regulatory networks, that is DNA protein interaction networks, the activity of genes is regulated by transcription factors, proteins that typically bind to DNA. Most transcription factors bind to multiple binding sites in a genome. As a result, all cells have complex gene regulatory networks. For instance, the human genome encodes on the order of 1400 DNA binding transcription factors that regulate the expression of more than 20,000 human genes. Technologies to study gene regulatory networks include chip and chip sequence and others. Gene co-expression networks, it is also known as transcript association networks. Gene co-expression networks can be interpreted as association networks between variables that measure transcript abundances. These networks have been used to provide the system's biologic analysis of DNA microarray data, RNA sequence data, mRNA data, etc. Weighted gene co-expression network analysis is widely used to identify co-expression models and intramolecular hub genes. Co-expression models may correspond to cell types or pathways. Coming to metabolic networks, the chemical compounds of a living cell are connected by biochemical reactions which convert one compound into another. The reactions are catalyzed by enzymes. So we know enzymes are biocatalysts. Thus, all compounds in a cell are parts of an intricate biochemical network of reactions which is called metabolic network. It is possible to use network analysis to infer how selection acts on metabolic pathways. Signaling networks, signals are transduced within cells or in between cells and thus form complex signaling networks. For instance, in the MAPK or ERK pathway is transduced from the cell surface to the cell nucleus by the series of proteins contained interactions, phosphorylation reactions. So food webs, so from lower classes onwards we are studying about the food webs. All organisms are connected to each other through feeding interactions. That is, if a species eats or is eaten by another species, they are connected in an intricate food web or predator and prey interactions. The stability of these interactions has been a long standing question in ecology. That is to say, if certain individuals are removed, what happens to the network? That is, does it collapse or adapt? Network analysis can be used to explore food web stability and determine in certain network properties result in more stable networks. So between species interaction networks in biology, pairwise interactions have historically been the focus of intense study. With the recent advances in network science, it has become possible to scale up pairwise interactions to include individuals of many species involved in many sets of interactions to understand the structure and function of larger ecological networks. To use of network analysis can allow for both the discovery and understanding how these complex interactions link together within the system's network, a property which has previously been overlooked. This powerful tool allows for the study of various types of interactions. Within species interaction networks, network analysis provides the ability to quantify association between individuals, which makes it possible to infer details about the network as whole at the species and or the population level. One of the most attractive features of the network paradigm would be that it provides a single conceptual framework in which the social organization of animals at all levels, individual, diet, group, population, and for all types of interaction, aggressive, cooperative, sexual, etc., can be studied. So researchers interested in ethology across a multitude of taxa from insects to primates are starting to incorporate network analysis into their research. Coming to neuronal networks, that is very particular about the biological neuronal network. So the complex interactions in the brain make it a perfect candidate to apply network theory. Neurons in the brain are deeply connected with one another, and this results in complex networks being present in the structural and functional aspects of the brain. For instance, small world network properties have been demonstrated in connections between cortical areas of the primate brain or during in the swallowing condition. So what are the classes of neuron? Coming to the classes of neuron, based on their roles, the neurons can found in the human nervous systems can be divided into three classes, that is sensory neurons, motor neurons and interneurons. So sensory neurons, it is responsible for the information about what's going on inside and outside of the body and bring that information into the central nervous system so it can be processed. For instance, if you picked up to a hot cold, sensory neurons with endings in your fingertips would convey the information to your central nervous system that it was really hot. Motor neurons get information from other neurons and convey commands to your muscles, organs and glands. For instance, if you picked up a hot cold, it motor neurons innervating the muscles in fingers would cause your hand to let go. Coming to interneurons that are found only in central nervous system. So it is having the information from the interneurons as well as motor neurons and the transfer and will also transmit the information. So this is the structure of neuron and neuronal circuit. Okay, so this is so this is the structure of neuron. So in central part it is similar like that of nucleus are present compared with the other types of the cell. So this is actually this is known as cell body. It is also known as soma. Compared with other cells, it is also having Golgi apparatus as well as mitochondria. So mitochondria, we know this is the energy back of the all the cells. So it is also similarly compared with another cells. It is also having the endoplasmic reticulum. So it is also having the nucleus. So in nucleus, DNA is present. So the this portion is known as dendrites. This is dendritic branches. Okay, dendritic branches. The long some that is known as axon. Okay, so the axon, it is ends in with the synaptic terminals. So with the synaptic terminals, one neurons is connected with the another thousands of neurons. So they are transformed from the message to one neuron to another thousands of neurons. So this is known as delodendria. This portion is known as delodendria. So this is the structure of neuron. A neural circuit is a population of neurons interconnected by synapses to carry out a specific function when activated. So neural circuits interconnected into one another to form large scale brain networks. Biological neural networks have inspired the design of artificial neuronal networks, but artificial neural networks are usually not strict copies of their biological counterparts. So what are the basic functions of neuron? If you think about the roles of the three classes of neurons, you can make the generalization that all neurons have three basic functions. So they are include receive signals, there is no information, integrate incoming signals to determine whether or not the information should be passed along, communicate signals to target cells. These neural functions are reflected in the anatomy of the neuron. So anatomy of a neuron, neurons like cells, they have a cell body called the soma. The nucleus of the neuron is found in the soma. Neurons need to produce a lot of proteins, and most neuronal proteins are synthesized in the soma as well. Various processes, appendices or protrusions extend from the cell body. These include many short branching processes known as dendrites, and a separate process that is typically longer than the dendrites known as the axon. Most neurons receive many input signals throughout their dendritic trees. A single neuron may have more than one set of dendrites and may receive many thousands of input signals. Whether or not a neuron is excited into firing an impulse depends on the sum of all the excitatory and inhibitory signals it receives. If the neuron does it end up firing, the nerve impulse or action potential is conducted down the axon. So this is the whole structure of neuron. So soma, cell body, this is the axon, so that is known as axon hillock, there is myelin sheath, this is the axon terminal, and this is the final ending is the synapse. So this is a it is exact portion of presynaptic cell, so it is postsynaptic cell. So in between the cleft only the neurotransmitters synthesis will takes place. So the neurotransmitters which include dopamine, gamma, serotonin, that is amino oxidase are the examples of neurotransmitters. They are only the micrograms, so they are mainly synthesized in this synaptic cleft. So coming to axons differ from different dendrites in several ways. The dendrites tend to taper and often covered with the little pumps called spines. So in contrast, the axon tends to stay the same diameter for most of the length and does not have spines. Coming to synapse, so neuron to neuron connections are made up onto the dendrites and cell bodies of the another neurons. These connections known as synapse. So and the sites which information is carried through the first neuron, the presynaptic neuron to the target neuron, that is known as postsynaptic neuron. The synaptic connections between neurons and skeletal muscle cells are generally called neuromuscular junctions, and the connections between neurons and smooth muscle cells or glands are known as the neuroeffector junction. So at most synapses and junctions, information is transmitted in the form of chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. So chemical messengers are neurotransmitters. They are mainly performing the informations, it will carry the informations. Okay, so when an action potential travels down an axon and reaches the axon terminal, it triggers the release of neurotransmitters from the presynaptic cell. Neurotransmitters molecules cross the synapse and bind to membrane receptors on the postsynaptic cell, so conveying an excitatory and inhibitory signal. So the third basic neuronal function, that is communicating information to target cell. So this is about the biological neuronal network and structure of neuron and their functions. Thank you.